There is a misconception that the way we feel differently or the way we become confident is by doing the thing. And there is truth to this. But why the hell would you feel any differently if you have done no thought awareness or process around that experience? This is why body connection is so pivotal to healing your relationship to your body. So many of us live in a state of disconnection, many as a means to survival, that we only learn to connect to our body when bad shit is happening. When we feel pain or discomfort, or our brain signals a fire alarm to our brain letting us know it senses danger. But the reality is, our brain hears the alarm and thinks, stop, drop, and roll, when the reality is we might only need a battery change. Confidence is not never experiencing body discomfort. It's not unending peace or never caring what people think about you. Confidence is not the absence of struggle, but it is the certainty, or to be without doubt, that whether or not we need to stop, drop, and roll or change the batteries, we are equipped to handle whatever comes our way. That you are without doubt a human being deserving of respect, human decency, and equity. Unfortunately for fat people, this is not the case. Welcome to the Body Grievers Club. Hi, friend. I am your host, Brie Campos from Body Image with Brie. I am a fat-positive body image coach, educator, and trained mental health counselor. My goal is to help you stop hating your body and learn how to move through unavoidable body grief. This won't be your average body image advice. No affirmations, no fluff, no filter. I am prepared to say the quiet parts out loud. And no matter how overwhelming or hopeless your body image feels, you belong here. Welcome to the Body Grievers Club. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Body Grievers Club. Today, we are going to be talking about body confidence. This all came about because not too long ago, I was on vacation and I was swimming in my aunt's pool. And I decided to post a video of me in a bathing suit. And it accidentally popped off. Yes, I am a super fat person wearing a two-piece bathing suit. Yes, at one point in my life, this would have been radical. I never believed I was going to be that body positive person. I didn't think I'd be the person who wants to show off their body or jiggle or say that I love my stretch marks or love any of the perceived flaws that I believed I had. But I never thought I'd be the person who would even just be able to show up in a two-piece. I sent the video to a sometimes fun times guy that I'd been seeing, and his reaction made me smirk. So I posted it. And I was thinking back to my 26-year-old Brie, that not only did she not believe that she would ever be desired in her fattest body, but she couldn't believe that she wouldn't actively hate her body anymore. That 10 years later, she would no longer believe that her fat body was disgusting, that it was something to be ashamed of and change. I knew that saying that out loud 10 years ago was taboo. It was much more widely acceptable to say that I wanted to improve my health, which I did. But that became my line. I'm losing weight for my health. In the work that I do, I call this a red herring. I believe that people genuinely do want to improve their health, but I often think people make the misconception that the only way to do that is through intentional weight loss. This is one of the 3 most common barriers to radical body acceptance. We would be here for days if I sat and listed out the ways that I have tried to, quote unquote, improve my health over the years. But my weight loss story always ended the same way. I'd stay tried and true on a diet for an exceedingly long time, sometimes up to 6 months and beyond, and I never cheated. I am a Scorpio and I have ADHD, hyperfixation. Try and tell me I can't do something and watch me prove you wrong. And in that time, my weight would only ever fluctuate slightly. And then I would become so frustrated, I'd give up. And every time I gave up, it became harder and harder to get, quote unquote, back on the bandwagon. I remember having bariatric surgery at just 19 years old. This was the year 2010. I was so ashamed of having this procedure because I felt like I was, quote, cheating or giving up. So I didn't really tell people unless I had to, like when a piece of food would get lodged in my chest and I would have to go throw up immediately after, or I'd order food and only be able to eat a fourth of it. I remember at the time implementing a lot of actual behavioral health changes. Some I would deem disordered today, some of them not. One, I started working out consistently. I noticed immediately the difference of how I felt when I moved my body. I remember making switches like salads instead of sandwiches because I really couldn't eat bread anymore without getting sick or without food getting stuck. But I was really beginning to feel satisfied with how I felt in my body. I remember driving back to my doctor for a bariatric checkup. And I was so excited to revel in these new behavior changes that I'd made and to see how much weight I'd lost. And when I stepped on the scale, I was disappointed with how little the scale had changed. I hoped my doctor would have celebrated my changes, the little weight loss that I experienced, anything. But instead, he said, well, it's not as much weight loss as I was hoping to see at this point. I was crushed. I don't think I was naked, but I remember feeling that way. I cried the entire way home thinking about what changes I would need to make in order to see more weight loss. There's more to this story. If you would like more information on my bariatric experience, I will make sure to comment that episode. I'm pretty sure it's called My Breaking Point. You can find that in the Body Grievers Club podcast. And I'll talk all about my bariatric surgery experience. I remember the people around me starting to notice body changes. And as people do, they started complimenting me. They'd say things like, "You look so good." And I'd think, did I look bad before? "You're so skinny." "You must have a seeing problem." "Girl, good job." "You're just saying that." "You're an inspiration." "What happens if I regain this weight?" I only lost about a fourth of the weight that they told me I should be able to lose. And I felt like a failure. How could I fail even at bariatric surgery? I was smaller, but I thought being smaller meant I would hate my body less. I asked a loved one who had had bariatric surgery, when did the body image stuff come? And they said to me, there is no surgery for that. I was at my smallest BMI, and I was the most self-conscious and depressed I'd ever been. Of course, everything needs to be considered in context. At that time, my parents were separated, and I didn't tell anybody about that either. I had started my job as an RA, and my undiagnosed ADHD made work-life balance virtually impossible. But all of that time, the hatred of my body weighed me down, no pun intended, like an albatross around my neck. I would look at photos of myself and think, it's not good enough yet, or you're still gross. Fast forward to 2015. I had an epiphany that while in the middle of my graduate program to become a mental health counselor and working an internship for an eating disorder recovery center, that there is not 1 year of my life that I can solidly remember not actively being on a diet, weight loss journey, or quote-unquote health journey. I realized how much of my life I had put on hold, and I was waiting till I, quote, lost the weight. I was waiting to go on my first date, to go on a vacation, to wear a bathing suit on the beach without a cover-up, to be seen in photos. There are months and years at a time where I have no photos of myself because of the grief of not only seeing the photos, but just getting in them. And in 2015, I hit this breaking point and said, what if I just started living my life on purpose? I can still do all the quote unquote health promoting things I want, but what if I also live my life? And that's exactly what I did. At 25 years old, I went on my first date. I went on a vacation and I wore a bathing suit and I took a picture in it. And you know how I felt? Fucking terrified and sad as fuck. Probably not what you thought I was going to say. There is a misconception that the way we feel differently or the way we become confident is by doing the thing. And there is truth to this. But why the hell would you feel any differently if you have done no thought awareness or process around that experience? This is why body connection is so pivotal to healing your relationship to your body. So many of us live in a state of disconnection, many as a means to survival, that we only learn to connect to our body when bad shit is happening. When we feel pain or discomfort, or our brain signals a fire alarm to our brain letting us know it senses danger. But the reality is our brain hears the alarm and thinks, stop, drop, and roll, when the reality is we might only need a battery change. Confidence is not never experiencing body discomfort. It's not unending peace or never caring what people think about you. Confidence is not the absence of struggle, but it is the certainty, or to be without doubt, that whether or not we need to stop, drop, and roll or change the batteries, we are equipped to handle whatever comes our way. That you are without doubt a human being deserving of respect, human decency, and equity. Unfortunately for fat people, this is not the case. In Kate Mann's book, Unshrinking, she says imposter syndrome is a social reality for fat people. Where most people might feel a little nervous going out on a date, the fat person's fear that someone may reject them for their body is a reality. That fear has basis. What we have to do is decide if we are co-signing that belief system and behavior. For years, I thought there was no way any man would ever want me because of my body. I always thought maybe in spite of my body, I could sucker some poor guy into wanting to be with me. And as I got older, and as I began dabbling with more online dating spaces, I became aware and feared being fetishized because of my body. The difference between appreciating my body and fetishizing my body is like how I feel about a man with a beard. A beard never disappoints me, but it's not a deal breaker. Unfortunately, some of these online spaces, it definitely propped up men with fetishes, thus supporting my belief system that it was the only way to be desired. Fast forward to today, 2026. I am still very single and still very unfortunately attracted to men. Relax. Not all men, but also like, come on. But for the first time in my entire life, and actively dating and playing the field, I have absolutely no concerns that I can find a man who is attracted to me. All of me. Not just because of my body, not in spite of my body. All of me. And do you know what that does for my first date jitters? Abso-fucking-lutely nothing. I imagined that dating in my most confident body, that I was going to be fearless. But all it means is that I'm human and I have regular-sized fear of rejection. But my body is no longer the scapegoat for why someone may not like me. Because if my body does disqualify me, that person is not a person I'd want to be with anyway. I like to say the trash has a great way of taking itself out. So how did I go from 2010 Brie to 2016 Brie to finally get here to 2026 Brie? As I said, I don't love the word confidence. I much prefer the word self-assurance. Self-assurance means to be without doubt. Here are 4 things I would do if I wanted to become more self-assured. Number 1, I would build curious, objective awareness on how I speak to and about myself. I started really small. When I'd make a mistake and I clocked that I would say something to myself like, "You're so stupid," I began to recognize that this isn't a way that I would speak to anyone else, and it's not kind. The more I paid attention, the more I realized how overly critical I was to myself, and had to reckon that criticism was never actually going to resolve the wound. Number 2, I got clear on my values and explored how to align more with them. I had a therapist who would always ask this question: does that belief bring you closer or further from the values that you want to live by? And I'd say, okay, Maggie, obviously me saying that I'm disgusting doesn't align with my values, but I still feel disgusting. And that's where we need to assess or reality test. Is it true, or does it just feel true? Is it kind? Would we speak this way to anybody else? And if not, how do we want to speak to other people about this same fear or concern? And what stops us from speaking to ourselves in that way? For example, if I was running late in a prior time, I would berate myself for being late. And then when I'd notice the berating, I'd have to actively thought stop and say, what am I feeling right now? Is the way that I'm speaking to and about myself going to help me stop running late in this moment today? When I recognized where the problem was, I was able to exit the self loop of criticism before needing to enter into positive reframes or positive affirmations. By just beginning to stop the criticism, it leaves space to acknowledge that's not how I want to speak to myself, even if I'm not going to speak to myself the way I'd like to. Number 3, I began contrasting and comparing where I felt confident versus where I felt insecure. I liken confidence to a chair. And as most fat people know, not every chair is supportive. If your body trust was a chair, what kind of chair would it be? Would it be a solid cement bench or one of those flimsy lawn chairs that will snap the second you look at it? What are the cement chairs in your life? What are the things that you are most confident in, and why? My cement bench would be my clinical skills. I am without doubt that I am an excellent provider. I believe that it is the skill sets that come easy to me and ones that I really love being able to use to help others. So why am I so confident in my therapeutic skills? For one thing, I have studied and practiced for nearly 10 years. I wasn't always confident. I remember my very first client in eating disorder recovery. I locked myself in the bathroom and had to talk to myself in the mirror. I was terrified. I'm no longer terrified. That does not mean I never make mistakes. I don't get it wrong, and I don't cause harm ever. But I trust myself and my skills enough to repair when I'm wrong and to continue to provide beneficial support. Time, practice, and an embodiment of my methodology. Now, part of what happens when we feel insecure is we begin to co-sign other people's beliefs. There's plenty of research to support that debating isn't actually really productive. When people hold positions and beliefs about something, information is not actually going to change their mind. This is why when I receive criticism, but what about health? My beliefs are no longer shaken. When I first learned about health at every size, I would try to explain it to people. And as soon as they brought up criticism, I would second guess everything I had just said. This is because there was still a deep fear that, quote, maybe I'm wrong. Today, as I live and breathe, I don't care if I'm wrong. But even if I am, I can stand fully behind my approach because I believe it is the most trauma-informed and the most value-aligned that I could live out. Early in my career, I witnessed near-death experiences for people desperately holding on to their eating disorders. I remember feeling the devastation as existing as a fat person, that I was damned to wear a scarlet letter of shame, that no one would ever know how hard I've tried to shrink my body, to be the, quote, good girl. And I know there are people who would choose death over experiencing fatness. And I had to reckon that if I wanted to be a provider that lives in alignment with my values, then my baseline approach would need to be safest for my most disordered client. That meant if I wouldn't use a weight loss centered approach for my most disordered client, then I couldn't use it for myself either. And that left me emotionally raw and naked, like a turtle without a shell. Choosing not to pursue weight loss forced me to reckon with all of the fears and anxieties and shame that I've just shoved under the rug for years. And for reference, I don't actually recommend this approach. But it does lead me to my fourth suggestion, which is to begin experimenting with exposure in a trauma-informed way. I use the example of a two-piece bathing suit because just 7 years ago, I failed at an experiment where I tried to wear a crop top for the first time. And in 2019, I had realized I had not been struggling with body grief like I had in the past. So I began to ask myself, what still feels like a hell no? Then one of my body grievers told me she was doing a boudoir shoot. And my initial thought was, whoop, there it is. My entire body screamed, abso-fucking-lutely not. So I distress scaled it on a scale of 1 to 10 or low, medium, high for my girlies who hate a Likert scale. And it was high, maybe even a 10. Absolute mayday, stop, drop, and roll. My body was not having it. If I had been coaching me, I would ask, what is something that feels charged that's not a 10? And so what I determined was wearing a two-piece or something that exposed my stomach would provide the activation needed. The thought of wearing one was maybe about a 4. So I went and I bought the top. I did all the things that I thought would, quote, help make it easier. I got a fake tan. I got a fake tattoo to cover up my bariatric surgery scars that would be visible. I did my hair and my makeup and my nails. And when I put the shirt on, I immediately felt that distress level change. And it went from a 5 to off the charts. We call this being outside of your window of tolerance. And then I did what I would not recommend anybody else to do, was I decided to push through. Because I was body image with Brie. I had to do this exposure. I believed if I could just get over my initial discomfort, I'd be fine. But it never wore off. My bestie was taking pictures of me, and she said, I think you need to change. And I said, why? Because it looks bad? And she said, no, because you look so uncomfortable. But changing meant failure in my mind. It took so much convincing, but I finally did. And while I felt immediate relief, I was so frustrated with myself for not being able to complete this exposure. Fast forward to 2020. I'd learned from some of the mistakes that I'd made that first time. For instance, I decided to wear a two-piece bathing suit to my godmother's house, a place that I have historically felt very safe. The last time, trying to wear a crop top out into the world, not safe. The activation in my body in this bathing suit was moderate, but it was tolerable. And so, of course, as Body Image with Brie, I decided to document it. And do you know what happened when I saw those pictures? I was flooded with shame. Activation level off the charts. And I remembered writing this. My heart sank a little when I noticed my stomach protruding. a part of my body I still aim to make peace with. I covered up my belly in that photo with my thumb, imagining what would it look like to look like that. I began mentally photoshopping all of the parts of my body I would change that would make me more conventionally pretty. It saddens me that even I get sucked into the grief of my body, the grief of what others may think of me when they see me. In this moment, staring at my screen, my body is filled with heat in my chest. It bubbles up in the back of my throat as I hold back tears. It's okay, I whisper silently to myself. It's only a photo, just a millisecond in time. I allow myself to sit in the suck. If you were to ask me today what a hell no in my body would be, I probably don't have too many. There is movement that I absolutely detest. I don't love going to the doctor's office. I notice glimpses of grief all of the time. Like the other day, when I saw this video compilation of girlfriends surprising their boyfriends and boyfriends lifting them up and spinning them around, I grieved for a moment. That probably will never be my story. Clothes shopping as a fat person is an absolute pain in my ass. I probably wouldn't be a fan of going to a naked spa, but could do it if I needed to. I still have remnants of body grief, like when I'm around people who historically have been fatphobic. I become very aware of my body, of my size, of what I'm eating. I grieve that I can't fit on an airplane and have to buy 2 seats or first class in order to fit. I grieve that my health will always be questioned because of the body I still exist in. But that distress no longer puts me on the bench. I'm still able to show up and live the fullest life. And even though clothes shopping is harder, I've cultivated a closet full of clothes that I love. Even though I have to buy 2 seats or upgrade, I still get the joy of traveling and getting new experience. Even though I know my health will be questioned, I know I am without doubt that I have done everything to promote my own health, regardless if those efforts are recognized or not. Building your confidence brick by brick requires body trust, requires body connection, and what we in the clinical world call unconditional positive regard. Or, as I would say in my trashy Jersey way, you have to be less of a dick to yourself. Start by naming all of the things that you feel confident in. Name the things you'd like to be more confident in. Highlight what gap is keeping you from that self-assurance. Confidence does not come from the absence of criticism or unsafety. It comes from an inner knowing, a self-trust that you are resourceful enough to handle even the worst case scenario. Resourcefulness is not resilience. Resilience is showy and flashy, is a superhero. Resourcefulness is a quiet surrender, a gut check, an innate sense that this is absolutely going to suck. And there's nothing we can do about it in our immediate future to change that. And most importantly, we will survive. Confidence allows us to transform surviving into thriving. Hey, friend, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Body Grievers Club. Like all of our podcasting friends, we ask that you like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear it. I know that body grief is tough, but I hope this episode helped you to feel less alone. To learn more about how you can shift your body grief to radical body acceptance, be sure to check out my free 7-step guide designed to help highlight how you can transform your body image story. You can also learn how to work with me inside of the show notes. Remember, my friends, your body grief is painful and real, but you are never alone, especially when you're part of the Body Grievers Club. Thank you for listening, and until next time.